Yeah, no, I didn't think to print any out this evening, sure. Send him an invite, so. Wouldn't quite know that would happen, but. Yeah, Vince, I don't, yeah.
You said Vince is on?
Well, hopefully he'll join in a little bit. I sent him an email. He got my notice too, so.
All right, is Jason on?
No, I didn't hear anything from Jason.
Okay.
I don't know, so.
All right.
2, 3, 4. 5. We'll have 5 if Paul has to go.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Welcome, everyone, to the Bonner Springs Planning Commission regular meeting for September 17th, 2024. I call the regular meeting to order at 7:01. At this time, will the city planner take roll?
Ms. Neff? Here. Mr. Clark?
Here.
Mr. Parika? Here. Mr. Mesmer? Here. Mr. Zeps?
Here.
Mr. Bombardier? Mr. Cruz? And Mr. Gebauer?
Here.
Oh, I see Mr. Cruz. I'm going to stop. I just turned and saw him there.
We'll give Mr. Cruz a moment.
Oh, he was on his phone. Right. Let the record show Mr. Cruz is present.
All right. On the consent agenda, agenda item number 2 is the approval of the minutes of the August 20th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. Has everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes, and are there any comments or corrections? All right.
A second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Larissa, why don't you go ahead and throw your stuff on there, and if Vince jumps on, I'll let you know. There's no reason for my screen to just sit there with my name on. If you would, you can. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Okay.
All right. Agenda item number 3 is unfinished business. None at this time. On to new business. Agenda item number 4 is public hearing PP 0221. This time, could we have the staff report, please?
Yes, sir. The property is currently zoned as light industrial. This item was previously heard and approved at the February 16th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting, and again at the August 17th, 2022. Sorry. No, August 21. Sorry, August of 21. The layout changed between each plat submittal. The number of lots went from 5 to 3, and now we're back to 5. The exterior dimensions of the site have not changed. This revised plat will only alter the interior dimensions of the lots. Current area included in the preliminary plat is vacant. The proposed plat will subdivide the property into the 5 lots, allowing for the construction of large-scale industrial buildings, with ingress and egress being gained from 110th to the east and Riverview to the north. The proposed plat does include the 5 industrial lots with an average lot size of 27.25 plus or minus acres, and a separate tract designated for stormwater detention and retention with a size of approximately 14.5 acres. Again, the proposed development will not change any lots outside of their preliminary plat area. And that is my staff report, sir. We've seen this quite a few times over the past few years. Might have even left out a date because it seems like there was one in there that I saw it too. But we've seen it 3 or 4 times, maybe 2 or 3 times.
This time, are there any questions for the staff? All right.
I do actually. So I was down there and it looks like all the utilities have gone in. Is there any utility impact on this as far as what they've done and all the,
So,
is it going to matter?
Sewer is provided through Edwardsville. Power is through Evergy.
I think I didn't state the question
sorry.
properly. By going to 5 lots instead of 3, it's going to create additional utility draw and usage was the upgrade to the utilities, is it capable of handling that?
So it was originally planned for 5, so everything had been set out that way originally. And then I don't know if they had some users that were looking to move in and they went down to the 3 and now they're back to their original 5, but yes, everything has been planned for. There's agreements in place with Edwardsville for the sewer. I'm gonna say we supply the water and, yeah, Evergy has power. Atmos is probably out there, would be my thoughts. I'm not sure what all utility providers are on site, but I know Evergy's working, if not, has power there, getting power there. Sewer is all on the developer. Lift station, parts of the lift station were installed during the Riverview Avenue improvements. Probably down to setting the station and doing the piping. Well, piping was probably put in the ground too, I would think. But yeah. So I guess to answer your question, sorry, it was already planned for 5, reduced to 3, and now back to 5.
So at this time, I'll open the public hearing. At 7:06. At this time, does any member of the public wish to speak for this motion? Or no, for this item? The PP 0221, the preliminary plat.
This is the preliminary plat for. Oh, is this the one? This is in favor, if you choose to speak in favor of it. This is the one that most of you, I suppose.
Can we just make a comment?
So we'll also come to a point where there is opposition. So I guess it depends on how you want.
It's more concern. Okay.
Well, and then we'll handle that in the opposite, or the,
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you, I guess, sir.
all right. If there's no member of the public that wishes to speak in favor of this, are there any that would like to speak against this item or have any concerns? If you would approach the microphone and state your name and address, please.
My name's Victoria Pavicic. I reside at 131 South 110th Street. That is the 80 acres that's directly east of this development across 110th. Today I want to address a couple of issues. The first one being the water runoff. When the new 4-lane road was put in, we get pretty much 100% of that runoff in the storm sewers. It either comes through the 3 drainage easements that are on our property. They're approximately 80 to 90 feet long, or they flow down on your west side to Speaker Road, which goes underneath I-70 and goes into the creek. That's a branch of Betts Creek that runs along the south edge of the property. Now, currently, our farm pond is being used as a retention pond. I have spent $27,500 to shore up the dam, put in a bigger drain pipe. We have a 60-foot spillway. So, in a small rain, our pond is coming up 1 foot to 2 feet now, okay? I'm currently working with the city of Edwardsville. KDOT didn't sufficiently take care of the riprap on those drainage easements to slow that water and that silt down because it's filling in our pond. So I'm currently working with Edwardsville, and they have plans to put in additional riprap, which could possibly slow that water down so not so much of it goes into the pond. Now, with this development, I've sat and watched it now since April. The earth movers have pretty much leveled it off. As you go towards Speaker Road, 110th Street goes downhill. So they've put in quite a bit of dirt, fill dirt in there to make that level. Now, I know initially when you did your work on the north end, which is Riverview End, there was some complaints by homeowners about the mud washing down into the street. Okay, currently, that big embankment that they put on the corner of 110th and Speaker, it's not seeded yet. So consequently, we haven't had a rain, but if we get a good rain, that's all going to end up straight down into that creek again. Our creeks have filled in like you've never seen just from the road. We've had some more problems with some of the, when they planted the grass seed mixture, Gordon did it because I hired them to do my pond dam after we had it fixed. Okay. That fertilizer has just come all the way into the pond. I've got algae like you've never seen. So I'm really concerned about all of this runoff, and I'll tell you why. I'd like to see that embankment seeded as soon as possible with the netting, which is what they did over there, and they did on my dam. The same people did it. To let you know, when our pond goes up, it's approximately 5 acres, okay? I put in an 18-inch tube, okay? When that pond goes up after a slight rain, it goes down and flows south into another creek, which is Betts Creek. When it gets above the tube, it goes out the 60-foot spillway. So all of the water is going south down into the creek. It's a lower elevation. What I'm concerned about, and I addressed this with the city of Edwardsville in my negotiations, our pond was built by the state in 1971. I've had the city engineers of Edwardsville out physically walking our property, and they know we definitely have a water issue from the runoff, and we're about to get some more off of this project. But what you all need to be aware of is when the state built this pond in 71, it's all done according to certain specs. It was created and made for a farm pond. It was not made for a retention pond, and the city engineer told us as much. But nevertheless, that's what it's being used for. But when all of this increase of water comes down from the spillway and from the tube, what you're getting is 1 mile downstream, there's a house. That house is going to get flooded out. And you know who they're going to come after? They're going to come after me. And if they come after me, then I suppose I'll have no choice but to come after Edwardsville and Bonner Springs, because I'm not going to incur the cost of a lawsuit for something I had no control of. I mean, when you put in a public highway, that's an eminent domain issue. You have no choice. It's for the purpose of serving the public. So now, I'm about to get more water off of all of this property. I am wondering, in this elevation that they've put up, how much of it is going to flow to the west? As you're well aware of, on that property, there is a 10-acre lake on the southwest corner, and then there's another small lake adjacent to it. I'm very familiar with this property. I knew the people who owned it. I was over there many times visiting with them. They've kept those lakes for retention. The thing I don't know is how much of that water from all the paved parking lots is going to end up down to the west, how much of it's going to come my direction. And that's my concern. And ultimately, it is that house downstream that I'm concerned about. And you would not have any knowledge of that. Obviously, we didn't even know it until the state built our pond, and it's all in the files. It shows where the house is located. Betts Creek flows down in there, and it will flood that house. So my concern right now is the water. We're having too much of it just off of the street. And really, we haven't had a gully wash and rain for quite a while. So I haven't seen the full impact of it, but I can tell you it'll come up 1 to 2 feet. And it takes about 3 days for it to come down from that 1 to 2 foot level, depending on if it's 1 foot or 2 foot. Okay, and I incurred that cost to put in a bigger tube. Spillway is still the same, so it's going to continue to, a 60-foot wide spillway is pretty good size to take that overflow of water. So this is a concern I'm addressing to you when you deal with these developers. Where is the water going to go? Because once the pavement comes in and the concrete, there's no room for absorption. But right now, I really want to address that embankment they put at 110th of Speaker Road. I would really like to see that seeded and netted as soon as possible. And all of that berm that they have put up is from Speaker Road to about halfway north. Was a planting of seeds and grass in there. If you all don't remember, the first time that all got, before it got seeded, we had a heavy rain and all of the dirt and the mud ended up on the sidewalk in the street, but we don't seem to have so much of that. But now that's all been removed for about half of the, I'd say a quarter mile, okay? That really needs to be seeded as soon as possible to keep any more of that silt and that mud from getting into the storm drains and into the sewers. Because once that creek starts filling up, and when you go down into the creek on the southern edge of our property, you can see it's all clay now. It's all red clay, and it's filling in. And that's the stream that's going to go down to that house. So I just ask you to look at those maps, take this into consideration when you're dealing with them. But I would really like to see that seeded as soon as possible with netting, because that will alleviate some of it. Because it certainly did once KDOT's got a mixture of grass seed and flower seed. It looked like to me most of it was flowers. But after it got established, we didn't have as much runoff. And so consequently, we're in a dry period now. It would be nice to get that seeded and hopefully grass growing before winter. And then obviously by next spring, they've got a good section of grass in there. Thank you for your time.
My name's Joe Dragish. I'm Vicki Pavicich's cousin. When Aunt Margaret passed away, I told her that I'd look after Vicki and run the farm. Partly, Vicki's telling you the truth. We get all the rain from I-70 south. You took out for the sewer on, I think, about the second lot south of I-70 on the west side of 110th. You took out a hill there about 12 foot, you dig out about 12 foot deep for that sewer. There was no retention pond put in. All that water and all that mud comes down towards 110th Street. And secretly you put in storm sewers so there's no grass to slow it down. It immediately goes into the storm sewers and heads to the north side of Vicki's Pond. On the east side, on 110th and I-70, there's a vacant lot there. That's developers run out of money. All that water runs in the same storm sewer and goes directly into the north side of our pond. All the water on Riverview, on the east side of 110th Street on Riverview, all that water goes into the storm sewer right into our pond. All the silt, all the mud goes into our pond, and it's filling our pond up. Not only that, we get all the oil from all the cars, all the salt, all the trash people throw out of their cars. We get that on the north end of our pond, which goes into right directly into the pond. Now let's talk about the project with the big warehouses on the west side of 110th Street, directly across from Vicki's farm. When that project started in 2019, King Construction did nothing. Nothing. I have pictures of the first rain when that 110th Street was nothing but a mud mess. All you had was a pond. All that mud, off of all that construction on the west side for this logistics project, came washing down that embankment, clogged up 110th Street. Edwardsville had to clean it up, went directly into the storm sewer, and went right into our pond. I've got pictures of our pond, looked like a mud hole. Vicki said our pond fills up approximately 2 foot. I've seen it as high as 3 foot. When it goes over the spillway on the east side, you're washing, in our south field there, you're washing a place out in our field. It started out just about 3 or 4 feet. Now it's about 20 or 30 feet long and about 4 foot deep. Nobody's doing anything about it. I pick up trash. I pick up beer cans, pop cans, beer bottles. The water comes through there so fast, it's washing out all those drainages along our pond. Washes them completely out. What riprap King Construction put in there, and what silt fence they put in, it's all laying on the ground. The rock riprap, the water comes through so fast, it just blows over the top of it. And nobody seems to care. King Construction didn't care. Edwardsville don't care. They promise you one thing and they do something else. I have yet to see any of Bonner out there look at it or anything else. Vicki mentioned that was a farm pond. That's exactly what it was, a farm pond. And if that dam breaks, look out, because somebody's going to die. Somebody's going to die. She spent almost $30,000, and there is nobody that even has offered to reimburse her. If you think she's a rich person, you are wrong. She don't have the money. She just had to put her cat to sleep. I had to pay for part of that. She just got the other day, sir, her cancer hasn't come back. This stress on her and me is terrible. Nobody wants to talk to us. Now let's just talk about this next project that apparently the first people who wanted to build buildings on that lot, on that piece of property, pulled out. They didn't have enough money. So now somebody else bought it. Now they're putting in all these big warehouses again. If you go out there today, they've been running them ukes and them track hose for what, 2 months? Nonstop. They've leveled that. When they first put it in, there was a berm along 110th Street about 15 feet high, big hill. They took it out. They leveled, right now it's all level over there. It's about 50 acres over there that's completely level where they're going to build these 2 warehouses. All that mud and water is going to go in our pond. They just put a new driveway in on 110th Street, which wasn't supposed to be there. Just this week. All that water on that approximately 50 acres, part of that's going to go in that driveway and go right into storm sewers and right into our pond. All the mud, all the silt, all the trash. And nobody cares.
I think one of the things that really concerns us, we would really like to be kept informed of what you decide and how these warehouses are going to be placed and where the water runoff is going to be. I just really hate to sit there every day and watch it and say, gee, I wonder how they're going to do this. Would it be possible through Mr. Lee to keep me apprised of what goes on over there?
Now, let's take the south. Let's take from that new driveway south to Speaker Road. Right across from Speaker Road is our property. Is our property line in the creek.
Yeah.
They have purposely put a drainage ditch on the south side of their property, which is, I haven't measured how length it is, but it probably covers a quarter mile. That will dump right into our creek. Now, they've done that. Right above that, all this along the road frontage is 50 acres. All that part is going to dump on that south edge. They only got about 4 or 5 rocks that's supposed to hold all this water and all this mud.
Let me just
But
say.
what I'm concerned about is you're filling in our pond.
That's enough. That's enough.
You are filling in our pond, and Bonner has never came to talk to us. Nobody has come to talk to us whatsoever.
No, that's enough.
I'm sorry. Your pond issue was caused by road improvements done through Edwardsville and KDOT.
That's correct.
Bonner Spring doesn't have anything to do with
That
that.
is correct, and I understand that.
That's, we,
But I'm more concerned about
Nope, I
what is
understand
the
future.
increase of water we're
Completely
going to
understand.
have from
That-
this project.
that we can address, Vicki.
And
Yes.
that's my concern today. And
So-
I really would like to be kept abreast of what you all deciding to do with regard to that runoff, because
So
it's something we
we
have
can
to
address
just
that.
stay on top
Sure,
of.
we can address that.
Yeah,
Our regulations state, and this may not have been the case leading up to this, but when they're done, our regulations state that the post-development runoff has to equal the pre. So any runoff that you received prior to them developing this land should remain the same.
oh,
Their,
it should then.
yes, per our standards, per our regulations, per the stormwater plan that they submitted that's been reviewed and approved, I'm just gonna say 90% or more of their stormwater is going to flow into their retention
s-
pond in the back corner.
So if that is the case, we don't have anything to worry about.
We would
My
hope not.
issue is, what happens if it doesn't?
So what
pan out
happens,
that way?
what happens between now and then?
Then we have some recourse. There is development that
Okay.
does happen, and it will impact.
that's enough, honey.
They're gonna
No,
be
I got one
required-
more thing to say.
They'll be required to put up erosion control fencing and stabilize their soil when they can, as quick as they can.
Okay.
The berm you're mentioning, I don't know about. I haven't been out there in a couple
Well,
weeks, so I
it's-
don't know.
it's pretty
if
good
I don't know
size.
if it's a stockpile of dirt or if it's actually a
No,
berm. I
what
don't
they
know,
did
Vicki, so I
was they
can't-
took
I
the
can't speak to
elevation
that, but-
from by my driveway, and 110th goes down, okay? And they took that dirt and completely leveled it,
Flat across.
straight across. It's just perfectly level. So it's a pretty good sized embankment of dirt, and it will be right next to that little storm drain that goes right into that creek underneath the road. And right now, we've just been lucky we haven't had a bad rain, because it would do some significant damage.
I will let you know the developer is really,
That's
really,
perfect.
really knows their stance behind runoff and rain
That's
events,
stuff,
but
that's some other deal. Come on.
Can I address their questions? I'm the developer.
Oh,
that's,
nice to meet you. What's your name?
you can either,
Oh, I'm talking about-
I'd like to know, how
I
come,
would like
wait
to-
until.
Hold on
We
one
have a
moment,
section
please.
where we're asking the applicant, if you want to do it now, Cam, I don't want to.
I'd like to
Okay,
know, how
wait.
come none of you have been out there? How come nobody's been out there to tell us what's going on? Nobody's come over and tell us.
I'm not.
We talked to Edwardsville, oh, we can't do anything with Bonner. Quote me on that.
But that's kind of the truth. I mean, we only have certain things we can say and do, and the project that created the most of your issues wasn't anything we were involved in. I mean, we actually had zero participation in that other than to actually dedicate some right-of-way. We didn't have anything to do with that project whatsoever.
So all this mud and everything,
That
we're just
came
gonna
off
have
the
to eat
roadway-
it, huh?
That came off the roadway.
No, it didn't come off your property.
Well, you were talking about things to the north of 110th.
Yeah.
That's
Right,
Edwardsville.
so
That's
to
not.
I tell you what,
clarify,
come out and meet me and I'll show you the pictures.
I mean, I know, but
No, I don't care what you know. You don't know nothing
Okay,
because you've
wait.
never been out there.
all right,
everything north of 110th is Edwardsville. That's not us.
It's part of your storm sewer for your,
No, sir, it's not. No, sir.
did I?
And I mean, I'm sorry, everything north of 110th is Edwardsville.
So-
Are, and I'm trying to.
And we have just that little corner, and we actually cut back in from there.
Right.
And we just have a tiny corner that is attached to the city limits.
Can you see on the map where the Edwardsville
That's.
city limits
so you
are?
See the
It's
dividing line of
difficult to
property
see.
there. We just don't.
we didn't
don't-
have, I don't care where you're dividing. We didn't have any problems until all this started.
We can't address the road issues that was
And
not.
between now and then, you want us just to sit back and let it happen between now
Now,
and
come
whenever?
on, that's enough.
No, sir, that's not.
Didn't you sit around and ignore everybody and us poor peasants?
All right. Are there any comments at this time, or comments from the applicant?
Need some more against, sir. I don't think
Oh,
we finished
yeah,
that.
sorry. Are there any more against? I apologize. Please approach the microphone, state your name and address.
Carolyn Cahar, 10550 Riverview Avenue in Edwardsville, Kansas. Thank you all for taking some time to listen to us this evening, and I know that the developer's here, and he'll probably be able to answer or address some of the concerns. So on Edwardsville resident perspective, it's quite a unique situation where we have a development that is 3 of the streets surrounding it is Edwardsville, so a different city. And so when residents come to us and their concerns are, well, I'll tell you about their concerns. We're limited in what we can do and how we can respond because we're saying, well, it's Bonner's development, so our hands are tied, really. And so the situation that they're in is, this is in what was primarily a neighborhood. Up Speaker Road, you have houses facing this property. Miss Pafizic's property is directly across, and so the residents are used to 160 acres of farm field across from their homes, and then they find out, well, now it's going to be warehouses that your house is facing, which I know if you like the view, then you should buy it, that sort of thing, but it still would be a little bit jarring if that's your neighborhood and you live directly across from farm fields. A lot of those people have lived there for decades. And so their concerns, in addition to just the change of the environment and what they're driving into and through and looking across from their front porches every day, or increased traffic. One thing that brought a little bit of solace was that berm that was all the way down 110th Street, because that would block the view of the warehouses that were being built. So a lot more alarm came over the last couple of weeks than when that berm was completely leveled out. Being that I'm not as familiar with Bonner Springs policy and development, I don't know your guys' procedures. In Edwardsville, we have design review committees where there are certain things that are established and saying, okay, if you're going to build in our city, you need to meet this criteria to make sure it fits in with the environment around and isn't something that would be concerning to the neighbors. Sorry, am I probably not using the best words when I'm trying to explain their feelings as well as I can. So I would just ask, when you guys are looking at this, and I know there's a lot on your plate, but just consider if this was right across from your front porch, as we have a lot of neighbors that this is right across from their front porch. What would you want those setbacks to be? What would you want the berm to be? How would you want the water runoff handled? Making sure that you know what the water runoff was before the project and then what it would be after, to make sure that's not affecting those properties or has as little adverse effect as possible. And so those are the things that I was asking you to all consider this evening, is if you've really done that due diligence and considered if this was in your neighborhood, what considerations would you want taken action on, and if you would think about those things before taking an action. And then the developer as well, thankfully, is here this evening, and he might be able to address those and bring some resolution to those concerns as well. Thank you again for your time. Make sure I didn't leave anything off. Water runoff, yeah. So again, thank you. I appreciate you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak against this issue? If you would state your name and address, please.
I'm Kelly Billings. I live at 11041 Speaker Road, and I'm just here to support the sentiments that have been said by the Edwardsville residents. We are in a weird situation. Edwardsville doesn't do well at communicating because they feel, they've done their part. Then we run into Bonner, who, thank goodness for Mark Lee, has often, when I reach out, gives me updates and has done great at emailing me information that I need just to keep us feeling good. Again, much as they've said, we can't change it. The land around us is changing. But the one thing, I think it started back in 2019, we attended our first meeting and just asked, please, to remember that it is residences all around it, and to keep the berms and to keep all of it looking nice. My little Speaker Road is a single lane road. They are doing great moving dirt work and everything, but they seem to have forgot that now cars can't pass our street because the weeds are so bad. Nobody's maintaining it. Edwardsville will no longer mow it now that it's under development. So little things like that, like the car scratches and stuff, are a little annoying. But mostly the berm is a horrible concern because none of us want to, one, have that in our site, but we realize we don't own that land, so we can't. But the one concession we did ask over and over again was to consider berms around the whole property. And then again, much as they've all said, half of our berm left last week. And that would be just discouraging for all of our residents. Again, selfishly, this isn't aesthetic, but we would just ask you to consider that it is really sad, 15 feet in front of my house, I will just end up with a brick building. So it'd be really nice if they just put some dirt and trees and remembered that, and then also took care of it so that it wouldn't ruin our vehicles going down the road. So again, just remember they're people, residents, and we're in a unique situation where we really don't have great representation because it's a bi-city situation, so we just need some compassion and understanding and some goodwill sent our way, please. So again, I thank you guys for even being open to listening to us today. So have a good evening.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time? If you would state your name and address, sir.
My name is Eric Kramer. I'm at 11351 Riverview Avenue, so I'm on the direct west side of this project. You can see that's my driveway that runs all the way along the edge of this development. My first question is who is responsible for keeping track of the water runoff off of the property?
Talking about after completion or
No,
before?
during
correct?
construction.
During construction.
Yes.
Okay. Mark, is that a question?
There's
How is that?
According to Mark, the city has no authority over it. So that's why I wanted to come here and ask this
runoff
question.
and stuff during construction is really, they put together an erosion control plan and they do a stormwater protection plan and all that's approved at the state level as well as through our city engineer, and then that's what's put in place. That's during construction, that's the runoff. After that, they've prepared their stormwater study that shows where everything's gonna run when the development's done. That's what's reviewed and given approval, and then that's what the plan is. I suppose if there's deviations from that, or if there's additional runoff occurring somewhere else, then it would be upon probably, really our city engineer would have to get involved, but I suppose it would start with me. But yeah, if there was something outside, once the development's done and the water's not going where it's supposed to, then that it would entail a couple of individuals.
Well, my question is more about construction. So, as you know, they tore out all those trees along my driveway. They flattened it, they raised it, they put a grate on it to go right at my driveway. And then we stopped construction because they decided they didn't want to go. I get it, it didn't work out. What happens if you tear out all those trees, flatten it, and put a grate on it so it's flowing straight at my driveway? What do you think is going to happen? It's going to flood, right? So in December of 2022, I asked Mark to come look at it. He did meet me out there. He looked at it. The only thing he did was call the developer. The developer come and look at it, brought his engineer, Andrew said, oh, we're not putting any more water on there. So for an entire year, they flooded my driveway. What happens to a gravel driveway when you constantly flow water across it? You can imagine, I spent a lot of money this spring fixing the water runoff. It is so frustrating, and I don't understand why nobody from the city is even paying attention to it. I'm not in the construction business. I've been around it my entire life. My dad was a superintendent for a construction company for 30 years. He showed up in February 2023. The first thing he said to me, and this was before they fixed Riverview, when the mudslide would constantly go across it, the first thing he said to me is the city finding the hell out of that developer for dumping his mud on the road. I just laughed because I said, the city doesn't even come out and look. They don't even care. And my next question is what privacy are you putting in for the people that are living around this thing? I'm going to go from walking out my front door, staring at a timber, to walking out my front door to sit and stare at trailers parked there. How's that helping the value of my house? How is that fair to me? I'm not against development, guys. I get it. The city needs to come up with development. But why do you not protect the people that are affected by it. Why is that berm that they're asking for, why is that so hard to hide it from us? So we don't have to see it. Like, am I asking for a bunch? And the other thing with the First Lady's comment, I'm going to tell you right now, if we get any rain in the next 2 weeks, it's going to flood 110th and, is it Speaker? Sorry. That's going to flood. There's zero doubt of that. All that mud's going to go straight across 110th and straight into to the creek over there. Why is that okay? Well, do we just not care about the people who live out there? They're on the edge of town. There's only a couple of them, so we'll just dump on them and let it go. There's no way this would be okay if it was in town. There is absolutely no way if this was being done inside the city of Bonner Springs, if there was dirt flowing off there, flowing across the road and into people's yards, there's no way you guys would approve it.
Mark, are you able to address some of these comments?
And every time it rained and mud washed out onto Riverview, we contacted the developer immediately. They worked through several fixes with an issue they were having. There was a spring at the very bottom of the hill, which didn't help them at all. But yeah, I mean, and that was kind of the comment I alluded to earlier, was the developer is very aware of runoff and what it can cause. They dealt with several issues while they were trying to improve and reconstruct Riverview. They kept adding, they did per the plan that was approved at the state level, they did everything they were supposed to do. As it progressed, they added more, they tried to stop it the best they could, and they just were up against a losing battle. Finally, they got grass planted, they fixed the spring, and the runoff onto Riverview has
No, it's
either
not.
stopped.
If
or
it rains right
significantly-
now, there'll be a mud flat going straight across there still.
The last time it rained, there was
There
very
was.
little on the street.
But there was still mud on it, Mark. That's not okay.
It's during development.
If it
There's
was
only
your
so many
house,
things-
would you be okay with
There's
it?
only so many things that can happen during
Sir,
development, but still.
You or me?
You want to go for it, Paul?
I'll do it. Got it. Everything that has been presented here tonight has been presented in the public forum, is on record in a public hearing in the archives of Bonner Springs. Tonight, first of all, this body, literally the only thing we are allowed to look at tonight for these things on the agenda item, per the requirements for publication and public notice of what the hearing is going to contain, is whether or not the internal dimensions of this lot can be broken up or can be spread out, broken up from 3 to 5 internal pieces. And so I do not invalidate any of the concerns. As a matter of fact, all of these concerns were brought up when the project was first approved in one way or another. All we are looking at tonight is, and all we are allowed to look at tonight, is whether or not we are going to approve internally on this lot going from 3 to 5 plat pieces. However, I also recognize the fact that every one of you have now gone on public record with what could very well be either OSHA, regulatory, state, local, or federal concerns. And if they are indeed as stated, then they could be major fine levying violations to the developer for not adhering to their runoff and storm management requirements. So it's noted, it's on the record, and it is part of evidence that can be used in a trial. But all we can do here tonight is talk about whether or not all of your concerns have something to do with changing from 3 to 5 internal platted pieces per the dockets. As far as the requirements of the runoff plans and the secret storm drains and the purposeful placement of a storm drain to run south onto a certain piece of property, the question would be whether or not all of the documents, including the runoff plan, the regulations, and everything are publicly available on the website. And I pose that to you, Mark, whether or not all of these things that were part of the packets are there. And I'll stop for the answer to that question.
No, we don't post the stormwater reports and things like that on.
Okay, so the stormwater survey prior to the beginning of construction on this is not a public document. However, I would respond to all of those concerned that it should easily be available by a phone call, or if not, definitely a FOIA request. And so in order to build a court case, which is what you're talking about.
I don't want to go to court. I just want them to fix it.
But this
That's all I
is-
want.
This is not the body that can fix your problem.
Who can fix it for me? Please tell me, because
City
he's
council-
helpless.
City council. You have elected representatives who are the ones who are the elected governing body who enforce and make laws. All we are is a policy board who's allowed tonight by our docket to look at whether or not we're going to go from 3 to 5 internal platted pieces. And if all of these runoff concerns had impact on why we should not go internally to 5 platted pieces on that piece of the property, then absolutely that would be something that we could consider in denying the motion to internally replat this property from 3 parcels to 5. Other than that, your council representative is the one who makes and enforces laws. We have no regulatory, or, well,
So everything brought up
enforcement
tonight was brought up when
capability.
this was approved, and none of it got taken care of at that time.
I'm sorry, I missed the first half of your question.
You said everything brought up tonight was brought up when this was originally approved.
There was a lot of people here the first night we looked at this thing.
So it was,
And I will, please let me finish. The dam was specifically brought up as far as the amount of runoff and whether or not the dam could handle it. The response, I believe, and we'd have to look back through the records, this has been a couple of years now, but that the Corps of Engineers or one of the governing bodies, construction bodies, had verified that per all regulations, ordinances, and requirements, the dam was able to handle it. Now, what you're talking about here is runoff. There were concerns brought up about runoff originally several years back as well. And so what we're talking about here now is whether or not the construction company has complied with all regulations as far as managing stormwater runoff during construction. But we can't do that here. I hear you, okay? I absolutely acknowledge the validity of what you are saying, and I am glad you have been here to put it on public record, because now your elected officials cannot deny it. Okay, all of your concerns are now public record and being recorded, and they will be in the minutes of this meeting. And so, but we are physically unable to do anything about it because we are not a regulatory enforcement body, other than voting on things that are put before us as they apply to the plan. And tonight, what is on our docket and what we cannot go outside of as far as what we vote on, because there must be public notice under several regulations that everybody impacted by a vote must be informed. And so we can't just make stuff up during the meeting and decide to have votes on it. It has to be informed to all those impacted. And tonight, our docket calls for voting on whether or not the internal plat will be changed from 3 to 5 pieces, preliminary and then final. And then we have something about adding some warehouses to something south of the K32. So I am not dismissing you at all, sir, and any of you, by any stretch of the imagination. But what I am telling you is that the best we can do is acknowledge your concerns and advise you to go to your elected officials, who are the city council of Bonner Springs and the mayor. Call them. I would say keep calling them, and don't stop calling them until you get an answer. And if they will not address your concerns, then I would recommend going to the State Highway Department and filing formal complaints against runoff mitigation during construction, because the state also has regulatory authority over this. But we do not. The best we can do is acknowledge your concerns and forward them in any informal forum, but we cannot do anything about the runoff. Other than, and I want you to hear this, other than the fact that as this progresses, we will be given development plans. We will be given all kinds of various levels of plans that show runoff mitigation and where the trees are going to be built. And then we get to vote on something. Okay, if they,
will
when they
that
want
be
to
a
go
public
final,
hearing as well?
that will be a public hearing, and I think it will be. If it's not, it will still be. Anybody can come in, and
Well, my
and-
next question is, though, by the point in time it gets to that point where you guys are going to even listen and pay attention to what people say, or is it down to the point where we're just gonna
Okay,
rubber
when
stamp
you say you guys, you're being very
I'm
accusatory
talking about the
to
committee
us.
that
Okay?
Whoever approves that.
I can listen to you all day long. I can't do anything about it.
I'm talking about the committee that this would come to for a vote.
That what would come to.
Is that that's what I'm asking.
So the
is
city
who-
council does all the final approvals,
Okay,
but we get all the plans first.
okay.
We vote on them before they do, and that will be, is that a
That's
pub-
the meeting
Mark,
I'm
is that a
referring-
public hearing, or is that just a policy?
The site and landscape plan now is done at my level, staff level, per our
Okay.
regulations that are in.
So when the site and landscape plan comes in, that shows exactly where trees, grass, and everything are gonna be planted by height and type, where all the runoff storm drains and everything else are, and how it all ties into the topographic relief maps. And everything you're talking about will be addressed at the site and landscape plan. And when that comes in, then you can talk to the
No, well,
the
wait a
city
minute.
manager, and you can look at that and
Hold on.
voice your concerns.
My concern with that, though, is I've asked Mark to be involved with that, and I was told I'm not allowed to be involved with that.
Okay, that has to be between you and him. We
So
can't
I'm
get,
screwed, basically.
we can't get involved. No, you have an elected representative who speaks for you in all things city. They are the governing body who makes and enforces laws. And so talk to your council member, talk to the mayor. I would call them. They are the ones who can immediately action this, who can come down and talk to everybody here who kind of works for them. They can solve your problem, but tonight, all we can vote on is whether they're allowed to have 5 parcels on this thing instead of 3.
Okay.
All right. Is there anyone else?
I hope
Sir?
you vote no on expansion from 3 to 5.
All right. Well, sir,
I'll just, it's one lot. It was never platted, so it's only one 160 acre parcel. That's all. It's not divided up currently, it's just one chunk of ground. They submitted ones that went from 5 to 3, and now we're back to 5.
So I misunderstood what I read. So it's just one big 160-acre parcel, and the question is whether or not they can divide it into 3 60-something,
That's the 5. 5 parcels.
or 5
Right.
39-acre parcels.
There you go. Do the math.
Yep, I know. I know, sir. All right.
thank you, Paul. That was an
Thanks, Paul.
excellent
I can dial in if you. Is there a way I can dial in?
I don't know if it's still, there was a Zoom meeting, but I don't know how much time I have left. I can forward you that invite if you want to join. Yeah, Jason's there.
Sir, if you would state your name and address?
Dave Moreski. I'm Executive Director of Hollis Renewal Center, 11414 Kansas Avenue. So unlike the others here in the room, we're actually residents of Bonner Springs. And so I want to, first of all, thank the developer so far of keeping the trees in that southwest corner of the development. My question continues to be the runoff thing, but kind of I want some clarity tonight about the retention pond. So we've had, obviously they've been draining the lake because we've had water in our creek coming down a couple days for extended periods of time. We took some pictures of the spillway on that lake of the dam that was clogged. There's an emergency spillway that was eroding away. So I think they're trying to address that. But I want some clarity about how they're addressing that, and then I guess the size of the lake or the retention pond that will be there, that I'm assured that it will hold all the water that's off all those parking lots and stuff. If I could speak to going from 5 or 3 to 5, I'm wondering if it would be within your preview to not approve that and then have some of those lots be just grassland instead of a building and parking lots. That would help mitigate the water runoff and maybe create some more green space in between some of these neighbors and have some room for that, not only development, but for also a pleasant place to be. So those are kind of my two concerns, the retention pond and that water runoff. But if I would say, if there's a way to vote know and have some of those plats be, if that's right, plots be more green space, then I would think that would be a way to kind of combine both of these concerns that you've been hearing tonight. So, thanks.
All right, is there any, sir, state your name and address, please.
My name's Joe Kahar, 10550 Riverview, and I understand there's a lot of frustration from some residents because this has been going on for 5 years, and before a project starts, we don't always know the impacts of it, and so 5 years into it, we got a pretty good idea. The residents that are coming up, they're frustrated, and they have complaints about what's going on because maybe those were addressed, maybe they weren't before it happened, but 5 years down the road, here we are, and we know some of the issues. But before you tonight is the approval or denial of the final plat as presented. I also noticed that I don't know what the stipulations are that are listed by staff, but I do know that this body can make recommendations for stipulations. And so there can be amendments made, there can be things as far as the berm and the screenings. Those could be stipulations that this body can add. They can make an amendment to the motion, they can add or deny it. You guys are the body that approves this. When it goes to commission, they look to you for your advice, is this good or is it not? And if it goes to them, they're gonna say, these guys said this was good, as staff has presented it, let's move forward with it, because they appointed you for this job. And so I'm asking tonight if there can be some assurance or some stipulations, I'm not sure what that list is, like I said, can be added by this body, so when it goes to the commission, they can know that these concerns, if you agree with them, can be added as stipulations for this plat if you're going to approve it. And so that would be my request, is that if you want to refer to your staff and see if that's something that can be done, I do believe that this body has that authority to put stipulations on the plat, because that's part of the motion is staff recommendation that Planning Commission approve the final plat for Compass 70 Logistics Center with the stipulations listed on the staff report. So if you can, if this body feels like any stipulation should be added, I believe this would be the time to do it. So when it goes to commission, they know your concerns or can hear from you as the Planning Commission, because they're looking to you for your recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time? All right. At this time, are there any questions for staff?
In the original approval, what is the berm? Believe so on the plat, stuff like that's typically not indicated, and I don't have any record of it. All right. Nope, I understand.
To be clear, all we're approving tonight is a change to a legal document that sets out how the existing lot is to be subdivided. It has nothing to do with what will be constructed or where. Is that correct?
Correct. It determines the lot layout, which does determine the position of buildings to a certain extent, because they have to fit within those lot lines, obviously, but yeah.
But in the process, what steps are after this?
After this, we're going to move to the final plat, and then once that's approved, they start construction.
Right,
More
but-
construction. Then that final plat is actually, it can be filed at different occasions. A lot of their public infrastructure is done. That was Riverview. Everything else
Right.
internal is private. So
Given the nature of this project and the duration of it, normally we have a very specific order we go in, and this is kind of, we're kind of
gone back and forth.
back and forth. So what steps are still left after this?
So right now we have building permits coming in. So I mean, they're in the construction process. We issued an
Right.
earth change permit so they could do the mass grading on the site to get it ready for their storm sewer and roads and other infrastructure internal. So right now, that's kind of where we're at right now. We issued the earth change permit. They've graded a lot, and they're still grading. We've got 2 site and landscape plans and 2 building permits for buildings out there already.
See, and that's what where I'm getting at. How much, many of the items are already approved, correct?
Some are in approval processes.
Some are
yes.
in the approval
Yes.
process, but other things that have been approved in the past, are they still valid?
No.
No, because of the duration.
Right.
So that's what, so
Right.
we've kind of circled back to the beginning of the process, so we'll have a site and landscape plan still to approve. We'll have the stormwater, the final for that.
Yep.
And then we'll also have the requirements for number of parking spaces, for number of trees, for signage, and all of the rest of this, right?
Yes,
And
sir.
those will be handled at a future hearing.
Most of the site and landscape
Site
plans
and landscape
are
plan.
at a staff level now, yes.
Okay.
And per all of the guidelines that are listed out for tree spacing, for plantings, for lot coverage, for grass.
Right.
For internal parking, and all of that is handled at my level now, yes. And I've actually rejected 2 of their plans already, so they've been resubmitted. One was for building design and one was for landscaping, so they've been resubmitted now, and I'm in the process of reviewing them again.
So, given the citizen concerns, how do they stay apprised of this?
I mean, honestly, once this is done, it's more or less per our regulations. So, I
For
mean,
the
there's
existing
not-
ordinances?
There's really not much public notice actually at all. There's none. There's open records requests and things like that. I mean, I don't, this might sound strange, but if I'm given approval through the developer to share plans or share things, then I can do that. But if if there's non-disclosures or something like that I can't let it out, then I have to wait until that appropriate time. But I mean, I would be willing to send the plans out to individuals at least so that they could see what's happening. I think I actually sent Vicky a couple already of building renderings. So, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. As far as processes though, once this final plat is approved, stormwater report is done and approved already. So that's where they're working towards that. Traffic impact study's been done and approved. So those things stay in existence because initially the plot that was developed for 5 lots. So the stormwater, all of that was done for those 5 lots. Reducing it could have changed some things, but we're back to the beginning. So all of those documents have been approved that would allow them to move forward.
Thank you.
Yes. And I do know that the developer is here and would like to respond to some of those, so I know he's coming up. I just want to make sure we don't miss him, is all.
All right,
Mark, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
If a berm needed to be put in place to allow for the neighbors not to be able to look directly on the facility, does that take place tonight or does that take place another time?
Well, I suppose that is, we don't have berm requirements in our landscaping. What we have is tree spacing and then shrub spacing in between them to create a fence almost in a way of natural landscaping, but we don't have berm requirements. I don't even know where to go with that, a suggested height or anything. We just don't have berms in our landscapes regulations. It's plantings, fencing when needed, and things like that.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for Mark at this time? All right.
So, I just asked when berms would get approved, and now he's saying that it's not in the thing, so it's never gonna happen.
I don't recall someone asking if berms would be approved or not, but
I just asked it when I was standing up there.
I didn't respond to that. Then Mr. Zepps might have, but I didn't. Yeah,
Did Paul respond to it?
I don't
Okay,
know, he
I'm
might
not-
have, but yeah, I didn't.
So he's essentially saying it's never gonna get approved, is what he said.
No, we don't have requirements for berms. I mean, we don't, the developer still could, but we don't.
Right.
In 2019 and 21, we asked for the berms, and the developers gave a hand-to-hand handshake on, hey, absolutely, we're gonna do it, makes it best for everybody. They were not comfortable with putting it in any minutes or anything else, that it would be a requirement from Bonner, but it was just a handshake, a goodwill gesture to the residents, was the 2 meetings I was at.
Okay. Yes, he's right there. Is this the same developer, Mark?
Yes.
Okay. No. That's what I'm pretty sure, that's what I think. I mean,
When they first started this project, they had about a 10 or
So they're no.
12 foot berm all the way along 110th Street. Now they started grading here recently, they took all that out. Took it all out.
I don't recall if it was a berm or if it was just built up. I don't know if it went down on the other side. I don't recall that. But
let's go.
All right, Cameron Duff, I'm with Skinnell Properties, the developer, address 7802 Northeast 160th Terrace, Smithville, Missouri. I too live in a rural setting, so I want to address some of the questions of these folks because I do understand their concerns. I've got about 10 things that I listed off here. I think the first is just making a general statement that we were not involved in the 110th Street improvements and some of the issues that we're dealing with, that the folks are dealing with through those. So that was long before us and had nothing to do with us. The second is when we had the aerial pulled up, I was going to address Mrs. Pavlich's question about the overall runoff from the site. So our site's engineered to run, everything is running to the southeast, or I'm sorry, to the southwest to collect in that 10-acre pond. We've re-engineered that pond. We're rebuilding that dam right now, and there's going to be an overflow structure in that dam. That's right. You can see the big pond right there in the southwest corner. So all of the water is running that direction. I'm sorry,
Sir, I understand.
It's not now. We're getting there. We've moved 500,000 yards of dirt. Another question that came up from Mrs. Pavlich was the ditch along the 110th Street. We had a big rain event probably, 45 days ago, and we realized we had some water or some silt run off onto the sidewalk, and it may have made it onto 110th Street. I don't recall exactly. But what our contractor's done is created a temporary diversion ditch while we're finalizing our grades for that site. So it's collecting that water. Now, I understand there's concern that that's going to dump into the creek on the south side of the property. I will check on that because that's not the intention of it. The intention is to direct the water where it's supposed to go, to the detention pond. And again, that's a temporary construction solution that we put in place while we're getting to final grade and then ultimately getting to a stabilized site. The berm along 110th Street's come up multiple times. We purchased the property in 2021 from a group called, I think it was Compass Commodity Group. I was never informed of any berming requirements. I don't believe we ever installed or built a berm along 110th Street. Before about 60 days ago, the only work that we had done on that property was focused in the northwest corner of the property. So what we've done is, we have changed the elevations in that southeast corner to align with our master plan. But it wasn't removing a berm that we had built and agreed to stay or to build there. It was the way that the land was. Next item, the maintenance along Speaker Road. I think this is something that we'd like to understand a little bit more. I do know it's, the right-of-way there with Edwardsville and who's maintaining that. Yeah. 3 years ago, my kids were just learning to drive, and he Is that on us, Mark?
It might be.
Because if we need to
Might have
be
to go look at it.
maintaining that, we need to be maintaining it.
This is the first I've heard about that, so.
Okay.
I'll go look at it and definitely.
Well, that item we're gonna look into and see if we can, because we have landscape crews that are out there, so if we need to go, put that in our regular maintenance. I think we did it once when Mike Webb was, I remember Mike had asked me as a favor to do it. Does that sound right? Okay. 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 We'll look into that, and by all means, if that's something that we need to be taking care of and maintaining, that's our responsibility. So, just a general, Mark touched on it, but the general berming request, as Mark said, we have every intention of, there's a code in place. We're going to comply with that code as it comes to planting trees, plantings along the property lines, and follow the code that Bonner Springs has in place. Mr. Kramer, we've had a lot of conversations over the past couple years. I've met with you on your site multiple times. I fully admit that when we first met out there was runoff issues. We had a situation where we had built a building pad in that northwest corner of the site, and interest rates went up. My company made me put the project on hold. So we had this big graded piece of land that was engineered to drain into storm drains that did not get installed. So what we did is we created a drainage ditch with rock checks all around that building, and ultimately to drain back down into the detention pond in the southwest corner. Well, I think in between that time. We met in December of 2022. Yeah. I think it was this. February of 2024. I don't think, and I think in between that time period, if that's correct, I don't know, Mr. Kramer, but if that's correct, I replaced the gravel on your driveway at least once, if not twice. We cleaned out your culverts in your driveway, I believe twice. And then we finally got that ditch put in. So
Mark, is this beyond the scope of what this is beyond the scope of.
He's standing here acting like he's innocent, he's done nothing wrong.
I'm not patting myself on the back. All I'm saying is that we acknowledged that we had made a mistake, and we're working with you. You were texting me at all times of the night, and I'm getting back to you. And
Okay.
So.
I believe, were you denying that you agreed to a berm or denying the berm existed?
I think it was me.
We didn't build a berm.
Right.
I think he's talking to what I said when I mentioned I didn't know if it was a berm or if it
Or
was
an
just a
embankment.
hill.
Yeah, I didn't build
There's
a
some
berm.
form of,
Yeah. I mean, I would see a berm as being rounded on both sides to hide something. I think it just went up and went to the ground. I don't.
regardless, there was some piece of turf or whatever that was blocking the view, whichever. Okay.
I think from the gentleman, I didn't catch your name, but the Hollis. So I do want to talk about your concern because I think it's important. I've been in touch with, about a year ago, we went and walked the property with the neighbor just to the south of us, just directly south of our detention pond. We had some runoff flowing off into his creek. We went down there, did a lot of dirt work down there to clean his creek out because we had put silt down there, and we shouldn't have. And he called us probably about a month ago, said, hey, I see stuff's going on. Can we, what are you up to? And I said, we're getting ready to finish our plans for the final detention pond and overflow structure, which it's about a 10-acre lake. It's designed to where it stays well below that 10 acres, and it fills up, and then it gets to a point, and then it fills an overflow, and then it's designed to spill over. So as soon as we have that final design done, I want to meet you out on site again with the engineers, walk around, look at it, show you what we're doing. I'm happy to pull you into that discussion if you'd like. As Mark mentioned, I don't have any issues, Mark, sharing plans. I think the only potential issue there is the Project Steamboat, just because it's a confidential project. The confidentiality is not driven by me, it's driven by the end client who now owns that property. I think the last issue that I'd like to cover is the Riverview Avenue that's come up, and Mark and I have been working on this thing for a long time. Mark mentioned most of the, he hit the high points, but I think one thing I'd also like to mention that I don't think a lot of the neighbors are aware of is there's 45 acres in the northeast corner of the site that we sold in 2021 to a company called Medline. And the road was designed based upon Medline's final grades. So if you're looking at the plat that's in front of you, it's the big building in the northeast corner. Medline bought the property towards the end of 2021 from us. They told us, they said, here's the building we're going to build. It was our responsibility to build Riverview Avenue. And we went and we built Riverview Avenue based upon their final grades. Medline, big corporation, they put their project on hold. And what we ended up with was a road that was built to final grades, which had pretty much almost all of the water draining to the southwest. And what we were left with, based upon existing grades, was about half of that water on that site was all pushing still to the north. So we had a ton of runoff that was coming off of the Medline site, which we didn't own. The only true solution for that is what we're doing right now, which is moving about 500,000 yards of dirt to regrade that site to then get all that water flowing back to the southwest corner, where it should be and is originally engineered to be. There's been a lot of frustration from the neighbors in the north, rightfully so. We worked through a lot of different solutions trying to do it. It was hard because we didn't own the land anymore that was causing the problem. However, the road that we built was the issue. So there was a lot of things that had to happen behind the scenes for me even to be able to get onto their site, get the dirt, fix the problem. They're a Fortune 50 company who, this property's a line on a spreadsheet to them, and they didn't really have a whole lot of care or motivation to fix it. Meanwhile, I'm getting calls, as I should be, a lot from neighbors and Mark, and so we wish that could have gotten fixed, cleaned up sooner. But I think the good news is that with the grading that we're doing on site, this is the long-term solution to fix that problem. And now you've got I think Riverview Avenue. I don't know if you've been down and driven on it on the everything west of 110th, but it turned out great. You guys did a really good job, and it's a really nice road. I think.
Do you have any other comments? Okay,
I'm done.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Jason? Okay. No. All right.
All right. Thank you, Commissioners.
This time I'll call for a motion to close. Oh,
Sorry. I was just, if the public hearing's still open, I just wanted to point out in hearing staff feedback and some things that came about during that discussion, we were in the understanding from Vice Chair earlier that this would go to council and we'd be able to be heard again at council. But then staff clarified that no, this is our last opportunity to come before you and ask that a berm be put in place and these conditions be added to your plat approval. And that's the reason I come before you again, is just because I thought that based on what the Vice Chair said earlier, that this would go before council, but you guys are the last stop here. You are the last opportunity for, to be the voice of the neighbors and considering if this was right across from you, how you would want that. I realize this might not meet the minimum criteria for Bonner Springs, but this isn't a neighborhood, it's not in an industrial area. And so while there might not be berms required for an industrial area in Bonner Springs, if this were in your neighborhood, what would you want? And you do have that opportunity by adding conditions to a plat approval, should you feel that's the right thing to do. Again, not to belabor it, not to take any more of your time, but that was one thing that I didn't realize when I listening to Vice Chair, was that this would be the last opportunity